The temperature is expected to dip this week, and that has people focusing on homelessness and people who are living outside in these frigid temperatures. KY Post reporter Jessica Noll has spent weeks looking into homelessness, and you're going to have a documentary that we can find on kypost.com. Tell us a little bit about what made you decide that you wanted to look into the homelessness in northern Kentucky.
Well, homelessness has always been something that's interested me because there's a lot of stigma attached to homelessness. So obviously, covering KY Post, I wanted to look into northern Kentucky. And with the cold weather, that's obviously a big time that people think about the homeless. So looking at the cold shelter of northern Kentucky was an important step in that, and to talk to the people who frequent it.
And so you spent 6 weeks going to that shelter in northern Kentucky. What did you do when you were there? And tell us a little bit about how your project is formatted on kypost.com.
Well, I started going and I talked to Rachel Winters, who manages the shelter, and she introduced me to people that were there, and people would come up to me and introduce themselves, and I just, the first time I was there, I just kind of hung out. I met people, talked to them, did no interviewing, just, figured out what the shelter was all about. And then as I kept going back, I was a familiar face, and I was someone that they were starting to gain some trust in. And I photographed while I was there, I interviewed while I was there, I did audio interviewing. So that's kind of the format of the documentary. It is an article, it's photos, and it's also audio slideshows. So you can actually hear the voices of the homeless, which is the name of the documentary, Voices from the Homeless.
And the stories, you and I were talking about some of them a couple minutes ago, so touching. Tell me about one of them that really hits home to you.
Really, they all kind of hit home because you don't, in all of their situations, they never expected to be where they are. One that in particular tugs at the heartstrings, maybe this gentleman that I interviewed who came to me and said, "Can I tell you my story? I don't want you to use my face. I don't want to tell you my name." He gave me his first name, which we use, but he didn't want anyone to know his story, but he wanted to tell it. So I was that outlet for him, and I sat with him for over an hour and let him talk. And he told me, how he became homeless, and he was in a fine situation, had a house, had a wife, and he lost his job, but they were okay. They were living from her income. She passed away 6 months ago, and that was all it took. He ran out of money, lost his house, but the interview, that isn't the hardest part of the cold season for him, the holiday season for him. The hardship of being homeless is nothing in comparison to the heartbreak he has felt from losing her. So his interview is almost nothing about being homeless, but is so much about what he misses in her.
And so what do you hope that we can all get out of by taking a look at these stories?
I think it's really important to remember that the homeless are not a stereotypical sort of people. They're not all alcoholics, they're not all addicted to something, they all don't choose to be on the streets. They all have their own stories, they all have a reason that they ended up on the streets, and a lot of the people that I talk to want to work, they want to get out there and make their lives better. It's just hard for them to find someone to help them, and I think Rachel Winters, who runs the shelter, does an amazing job for that.
Well, I think that we can all learn a lot by taking a look at this at kypost.com. Check it out there.